Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to our Broadband and Beyond series. This is our second series, and we will have a total of 3 series bringing you this information. I'm Kirby Jordan. I'm from Roanoke Electric. I'm the Vice President of Member Services and Communications, and we're really excited to partner with the Institute of Emerging Issues out of North Carolina State. So we've got some great speakers lined up today and a lot of good information to share with you. And I wanted to cover just a few housekeeping rules so you understand how our webinar works today. First of all, when we have this virtual meeting, I wanted to let you know that we initially had these last year called Straight Talk forums, and we decided we wanted to do something different and change this topic to broadband and beyond. And then the COVID-19 hit, and we decided we better take this meeting virtual rather in person. So we're all learning about the technology as we go, and we've had a little technical problem today with our moderator, but she's going to join us by phone. So we all know that no matter where you live, broadband can be a tricky piece of technology. Anyhow, when we have the guest speakers, you can hit the chat button at the bottom of your screen and feel free to ask questions as the meeting goes. We want the meeting to be very interesting and dynamic and have that opportunity for you all to talk and join in the conversation. So please, we encourage everyone to ask questions and use that chat function. Your audio will be muted, but you can use the chat function. I also wanted to give you a quick update of where Roanoke Electric is with our Roanoke Connect business. The Roanoke Connect is our internet services, and I know that many of you have been calling and asking about our progress, and unfortunately we had to curtail our installation for a few months. We've decided to revamp our strategy and go with another engineering company, and with that we have decided that our layout initially will be changed, and we now are going to be bringing fiber to the home. So this is a very large undertaking, but we're very excited about it, and we feel it will bring you better service in the long run, and it will be faster and more reliable. So we appreciate your patience right now. We're working very, very hard to do the entire area and the region, lay it out, and like I said, it will give you that better connectivity in the long run. So for those that are with us, oops, there was a little bit of sound. Those that are customers of ours now, member owners, we appreciate it, and we appreciate your patience. But if you'd like to sign up, we have a new crowd fiber site at www.register Roanoke Connect, and at that website you can put in your name and your address, and on Google Maps you'll be able to see where your house is and where we will be coming. The timeline will be added, but we will also be keeping communication with you during this process. So we will be going back into construction in October, and we're excited about the progress we'll make at that point. We really want to know that we, again, appreciate your support through this time. It's been challenging, and with COVID, we know how much more internet is so important to this area in rural North Carolina, and that's why we brought these great guest speakers to come and talk about it. In the short term, we have set up public hotspots for you all to use. Some of you may be using a hotspot today, and we have about 20 locations that are also listed on our RoanokeElectric.com website. So you can find where those are, and it's a safe way to just drive up, log on, no password is needed, and it provides you with that high-speed internet connectivity during this time. We know your children need to get their homework assignments. We know that you need to apply for jobs or apply for the stimulus monies. We know it's just an important tool that you must have at this time. So we hope this will help out as a temporary fix. I'm really excited to now introduce the director of the Institute of Emerging Issues, Leslie Bonney. He's been great to partner with us and, like I said, to help educate everyone across North Carolina about the importance of broadband, but also educating people about rural broadband and also helping get devices to the people that need them. Leslie?
Kirby, thank you so much. As Kirby mentioned, my name is Leslie Bonney, and I'm the director of the Institute for Emerging Issues at NC State University. We are all working virtually these days, and so we are scattered to the winds right now and doing our work virtually, as a lot of you are. I'd like to especially thank Roanoke Electric for convening these meetings. They are really a leader in the state in taking on this issue and really have a commitment to serving their customers that I hope you'll appreciate. Sometimes the folks in your own backyard you don't appreciate because you realize or you think everybody else is doing that. Let me assure you, Roanoke Electric is really going the extra mile on this issue. And so it's a particular blessing for us to be able to work with Roanoke Electric on this. We're excited about this series of meetings because we think, over the course of these 3 meetings, we're really going to take on 3 of the biggest issues that are facing communities of all sorts across North Carolina today. This is an issue that we've got to figure out a way to get right. Children have to have the ability to learn if our schools are going to work right in a virtual environment. And even as we go back to school next fall, we don't know exactly what's going to be happening. We know that public schools are being asked to come up with plans for remote learning. So nobody hopes that that's going to continue. But I think even during the school year, if people are physically together when there's a snow day or some other sort of event like that, people are going to be asked to have a remote learning plan so that we can do that. Workers are being asked to work from home, many of them, and so it's important to have a solution there. And increasingly, a number of people are being asked to do their initial health care from home. So if we don't get this right, then it's a real equity challenge for the people in our state, and it means we can't do as well and be as good a state as we otherwise need to. So there's absolute value in this. We're really excited by the guests that we have today. You'll hear from them in just a second, but just as an illustration of the problem, I wanted to toss to my colleague Maggie Woods, who's really been taking leadership for us on this issue of digital inclusion, and just to note that she tried to join us by video but was unable to, so she's going to be running the meeting over a regular old telephone line. Maggie, thank you for being here and look forward to your facilitation of the next part of the program.
Great. Thanks so much, Leslie, for the kind introduction, and a huge, huge thank you to Roanoke Electric. It's been such a wonderful experience partnering with all of you, and I just echo Leslie's sentiments. As Leslie noted, I am calling in by phone. This does illustrate the issue that broadband access is a challenge, whether you are in a rural or an urban area. This is something that we are all faced with right now as we are at home trying to connect and do our work remotely. I'd actually like to ask if everyone who has joined, if you feel up for it, just to type a quick hello message in the chat, tell us who you are, where you're calling in from. We really do want this to be an interactive webinar. So once we get into the Q&A with our speakers, we'd love to hear from all of you. But as a start, please type a hello and tell us who you are, where you're calling in from. So today we're talking about a really important issue. We are talking about public Wi-Fi and some of the challenges and opportunities that it presents right now during COVID-19. And when I say public Wi-Fi, basically what I mean is Wi-Fi that you're not connecting to at your house. So this could be Wi-Fi that you connect to through your school. Last week we had a great discussion with folks from Halifax County Schools about, in partnership with Roanoke Electric, how they've created Hotspots so people can come, park in their parking lot, access their public Wi-Fi. You can also access public Wi-Fi from fire stations, from churches. Businesses might leave their Wi-Fi open, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. Libraries. So a lot of ways that you can access public Wi-Fi. And this is particularly important right now because if you don't have Wi-Fi in your home, you're likely leaving your house in order to access public Wi-Fi. And this is a major challenge because COVID-19 is shedding a spotlight on the digital divide. It's shedding a spotlight on those who have access to the internet and those who don't. Because if you don't have access to the internet at home, it's really hard to do your homework. It's really hard to do your job remotely, as we're seeing right now today. It could be hard to connect to your healthcare provider. A lot of clinics have gone almost fully telehealth if it's not an emergency. and often you need a broadband connection for that. It might be challenging for you to connect to your bank as well if you don't have access to the internet at home. So this is a major challenge. It was a challenge before the pandemic, and it's really a crisis right now. So today we're going to talk about some of those issues and specifically talk about public Wi-Fi and what are the challenges and what are some of the opportunities. Before we get into our fabulous guest speakers today, I did just want to share some statistics with you. So if we could get the slide up on the screen that shares those statistics, that would be great. And for those of you who joined us last week, my apologies. These statistics have not changed in a week, but I think it's important that we all get on the same page of where were we when it comes to broadband access and subscriptions before the pandemic hit, because this really illustrates where the gaps are and why access to Wi-Fi and particularly access to public Wi-Fi is so important right now. Before the pandemic hit, about 25% of people lacked access to a desktop or laptop at home. And about 9% of people only had access to the internet through their smartphone. And this is an important feature to mention because while smartphones can do a whole heck of a lot, they're harder to do your homework on. It's really hard to do your job just on a smartphone or apply for your job or apply for unemployment on your smartphone. And one of the major issues we're seeing, particularly right now, is that if you have a smartphone, you probably have a data plan. And if you hit your data limit, you can't use that phone anymore unless you're willing to pay extra money in fees. And so we often see people going to public Wi-Fi lots in order to connect their smartphone as well. This next statistic, about 5% of people in North Carolina lacked access to broadband. That's a little bit of a misnomer. This comes from the FCC. It counts if one household in a census block has access to the internet. It says that the entire census block has access. And so I'll show you a map in just a moment that better illustrates where some of the gaps are. We know that before the pandemic arrived, about 22% of people in North Carolina didn't subscribe to any kind of internet. And about 41% of people didn't subscribe to broadband, which is what we consider high-speed internet. We don't have to go into the technicalities today unless you have questions, but we do consider broadband high-speed internet. And so what this means, as you can see, is that if you don't have access to reliable internet at home, you need to rely on public Wi-Fi. North Carolina has been addressing this in several different ways. There was just a big announcement that with a partnership between Google, Duke Energy, and AT&T, the state is providing access to public Wi-Fi on 280 school buses around the state so that students and family can access the internet. But it is a major challenge, and we're going to dig into it in just a moment. If we could move on to the next slide where I could show the map. So I mentioned that the FCC says that only 5% of North Carolinians don't have access to the internet, but we know that it is much higher. And this map shows a little bit more of those nuances. This shows underserved areas by broadband service, and any area that is highlighted in that kind of pinky orangey color is an underserved area. So you can see where many of you are calling in from are in the northeastern part of the state. That is definitely highlighted as an underserved area. And you can see maybe it's about a third of North Carolina is underserved by access to broadband, so a major issue. But enough about the statistics. I do want to get to the main event today, which are our two fabulous guest speakers. So we have Sarah Nichols, who's a regional planner for Land of Sky Regional Council and West NGN Broadband Initiative out of the western part of the state. She's going to be talking about what they're doing out west, and she's also been in this field for just a long time and can provide a lot of context of what we're seeing in North Carolina right now. And then we'll be talking to Amy Braswell, Executive Vice President of a Hosky Chamber of Commerce, who's going to be talking about some of the opportunities and challenges that she's seeing right here locally. So welcome to both of you. Sarah, we are going to get started with you. And for those of you on the call who aren't familiar, Sarah, could you give an overview of Land of Sky Regional Council and what you do and who you serve, and then what the heck is this West NGN Broadband Initiative?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for that, Maggie. Land of Sky is a council of government in the western part of the state. So the councils of government are all across the country, but our mission, we're a unit of government that works a little bit differently from your city or local county government, in the sense that we think of things regionally. So you guys are all in one in North Carolina somewhere. I serve the Buncombe, Madison, Henderson, Transylvania County area. And the local governments appoint people to our council to kind of jurisdict what the big things. So when things are bigger than their tax base, bigger than their borders, that's a really good space for us to be in, to help think through, like, how do we do things bigger and how do we work collaboratively. I'm on the economic and community development team. Specifically, we are required to put out a 5-year strategic plan for our department. And through that, we have to continually identify what the region's highest priorities are. We just completed that, and broadband was our second highest ranking priority, second only to affordable housing. And it kind of tells us that even though we've done a lot of work, there's definitely still a long way to go. People still want to see this happen, and they see it as a very high priority. The West Engine initiative has been about 4 or 5 years strong, and it started to try and recruit essentially a gigabit fiber through some of our more metropolitan areas. So that the goal is if we could incentivize or help recruit this new provider to the area, they'd put really strong service through the metropolitan economic drivers, and then they would build out from there, was the plan. That's been going on for a while, and I would say that deployment is still our highest priority, but how government plays in relationship to deployment can be a little tricky. And the why of broadband is always more compelling than the how, the nuts and bolts, nodes, fiber, wireless, etc. It's the kids doing homework, it's the telehealth, the economic development, and what West Engine is doing right now is trying to leverage the how of broadband and do it systemically, hopefully, by kind of changing policy and how government plays in it to build a stronger network.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, for that overview. And I just wanted to note in the chat, Leslie Boney mentioned that, Sarah represents Land of Sky regional government. Most of the people in the Roanoke Electric Service area are a part of Region L or Region Q Council of Government. So if you've connected with them, you might know a little bit more about them. So Sarah, today we're talking about public Wi-Fi specifically. And I know that this is something that West NGN Broadband Initiative is working on. Can you tell us about the types of public Wi-Fi in your region and any local efforts in place to increase public Wi-Fi, particularly right now?
Sure, and this is something that I'd say escalated from our pre-COVID. I would say what we wanted was to see more public Wi-Fi places lit up so that things are closer. So oftentimes that access issue is either due to an affordability or non-existent of either you're not getting internet at your home or it doesn't exist. And so the more places we have kind of on the map, the easier that is for our citizens to be able to connect. When COVID hit and suddenly kids were out of school and people are working from home, things escalated very quickly, and it kind of reprioritized our shuffle in how do we do things the fastest and the quickest. So public Wi-Fi, as a lot of people are familiar with, maybe you could go to a McDonald's, a Starbucks, a library, you can log in, it's open, an open network. And these can be privately or publicly funded. So this is one of the ways that government can kind of play in the broadband field. And they oftentimes need to function with some sort of, this is in the grid a little bit, they need to function with some sort of backbone, be it wireless or fiber. And then that signal is broadcast out into an area that it can reach. And then the person just kind of needs to sit in that area with their device to be able to connect to it.
Great. And Sarah, what have been, I know that you guys have been working hard to increase access and information of what public Wi-Fi is available in the region. Can you talk us through a little bit about that, what's happening right now?
What?
Sarah, are you there? Did we lose you?
See you. See me or hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Did you get that? Did you get that last question?
I did. Thank you. You know, when this kind of what assets we had and what resources we had, we needed to do something in the homework gap, which is kind of our jargon for schools, like what their biggest priority is once remote.
So Sarah, I'm having some trouble hearing you. Are others having trouble hearing Sarah as well? Okay, I'm hearing some nods. Sarah, what I might do is jump to our next speaker for just a moment, give it a little bit of time, and then come back to you to follow up on that question. I just want to make sure that everyone's hearing you fully about this important issue. So, Amy, are you there on the line?
I am. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. So we can hear you. We're just going to jump around just a little bit. I appreciate all of you sticking with us here. But Amy, many of you probably know many of the people on this call, but you are the Executive Vice President of the Husky Chamber of Commerce. Could you talk, for those of us who aren't as familiar with the Husky Chamber of Commerce, could you talk about what the chamber does and who you serve?
Sure. We're a small chamber in a small town. The Husky Chamber was established in 1936. I have to really stretch resources in how we maximize the results of what we have to use. And so I have focused on economic development and quality of life primarily at our chamber. We are not just an Husky chamber, though. We have members from 5 different counties, and we participate in a regional board of the Albemarle region. There are 12 counties in that, and our function and our purpose is to create a larger body that speaks with one voice to have a little bit more persuasion and influence in the state of North Carolina. And regional treating broadband and access.
Amy, are you still there?
Moved to a community, and you walked into a house you wanted to buy and you flipped a light switch and the lights didn't come on, and they said, oh, well, you have electricity here from 8 till 12. You would have thought, well, that's really strange. Well, we have that same problem recruiting business and industry and even employees for business and industry because they don't have reliable Wi-Fi everywhere.
Thank you for that, Amy. And so jumping on that about not having reliable access to internet everywhere. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're hearing from your member businesses about their challenges with connectivity and internet access?
Some of the biggest challenges that we have got is the speed and the reliability. As we move into the future, our smaller businesses particularly realize that they need to participate in e-commerce. We all are concerned in communities that bricks and mortar stores are struggling, but bricks and mortar stores
Amy, are you still there? I'm still having some trouble hearing you.
Hearing Amy?
Yes. All right. I missed the last about 30 seconds, and I'm on the phone, so I think the internet must have cut out. So you were talking about brick and mortar stores, and that's where it cut out for me.
We worry about brick and mortar stores because so many people are used to shopping now from home and having merchandise delivered to home. So our businesses realize that e-commerce is very important to their survival in the future. So the speeds are an issue, and the cost, frankly, is an issue for people. Yeah. We want to try to get them on there. I created a marketplace thinking I would link everyone's website up to this marketplace. They could advertise on our marketplace and then have people go shop in their businesses. I was shocked to find out that the businesses don't have websites because they had not had reliable enough internet to invest in it. So that has been a huge challenge. Another thing that I hear is we have, we want the public hotspots, but we have a problem with transportation for a lot of people, and this COVID crisis has really brought that to the forefront. And even students who had access to these hotspots, and Roanoke Electric has been wonderful doing this. The Community Health Center has been wonderful providing them. We've had some at churches, but kids could not always get to these hotspots. Parents saw a lot of our children have in single parent families. They did not always have transportation available to them. It would need to be planned. We have an aging population that is having to learn very quickly how to use internet, but they're afraid of it. They don't really have the skills. So we have the challenge of making sure these people not only have the computer, the equipment, but the skills to be able to, and the confidence to be able to connect online for their health care, for ordering food and groceries. I mean, we've seen all this during this crisis. And reliability, it cuts on and off. I was a prime example yesterday. I'm at Roanoke Electric today because mine did not work yesterday. I will say, though, that I have all internet television at my house, and I have friends in Hertford County who have no internet access, friends in Northampton County who have no internet access. I have friends who still have dial-up access. So there is no consistency at all. And it affects us as a community economically when we go and recruit a new business here, or we go and recruit employees, take community tours and take people on it. The first thing they want to know is where they have these utilities. So it affects property prices. It affects the business coming here. They have a checklist. If you don't have this high-speed internet access, you're not going to meet one of their ticks on their checklist. So we need this.
Yes, Amy, I'm just going to jump in there. I think you're absolutely making the point that Sarah was making earlier, that it's the stories that matter about broadband. It's the economic development. It's the access to healthcare. It's the access to being able to do your internet or your homework and address the homework gap. I did actually want to jump back to Sarah just for a moment. Sarah, Amy mentioned transportation to these public Wi-Fi zones. Is that something that you're also seeing out west as challenges with transportation?
Definitely. That escalate as a lot of the places that people were already using the public Wi-Fi stopped existing in the COVID space. So they struggled to find a space to begin with, but for a lot of people in rural areas, that was already a haul. And if you're kind of painting a situation, if I'm a fifth grader and my mom's still an essential worker to drop me off somewhere to use the internet, it's like that's just not a functional thing that works, right? That's not an ecosystem that's functioning for our people.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sarah, I'm wondering if you could also address some of the challenges aside from transportation. What other challenges are you seeing to people being able to use public Wi-Fi? And then Amy, I'll go to you with a similar question. But if you Google public Wi-Fi, everything you see immediately, your top searches are public Wi-Fi is not secure, you shouldn't use it. So can you talk a little bit about some of those challenges around security?
Yes.
Sarah, I may have lost you again. It's breaking up a little bit. I'll come back to you in a moment. But Amy, I know that this is something that many of your own businesses are struggling with in terms of security. Can you talk about some of the challenges that your businesses, your member businesses, are having with providing Wi-Fi?
I can't speak very much to what their challenges are. I think that it's an emerging issue here because with this, we've realized that we've got to get on the stick, and we went from Friday till Monday having to make this conversion. For our schools, they realize that their security is not so much an issue, but they realize the advantage that they will have moving forward in areas where they have not been able to afford to bring certain teachers in to teach certain skills or certain classes. They realize now that since we've made this jump, they're going to be able to provide this via the internet. And everyone agrees, whether we're talking telehealth, economic development, or in our educational system, that nothing moving forward will be the same. And there's a lot that has come out of this that's good. Security is an issue. And I think at first when we started meeting 2 months ago, everybody was Zooming. And I understand Zoom is an issue. And so there are other products out there. Microsoft Teams is one that offer more security. But I think security is always going to be a matter of staying one step ahead of the people who figure out the system that you did before.
Absolutely. Sarah, I'm going to try to go back to you and just see if you have more to add on some of these challenges.
I think a lot of times with the business, I'm getting asked, try to turn off my video to see if that helps. So sorry, you won't be able to see me, but I'm gonna try this.
And we can hear you perfectly right now. So right now it's great.
Okay, so don't turn my head the other way. Got it. So the businesses that that oftentimes offer this, and so what we kind of did, we'd started a project called Wi-Fi Lot to encourage more people to open up their network. And we heard a lot from businesses and entities that they were just not comfortable with that because they didn't want their system hacked into, and that their stuff needed to be protected, which is absolutely true. And so there's a cybersecurity issue on both sides, whether you're providing the service, having your system hacked into, or you're using the service and it's kind of an open network. This is one of these cases where if you want to protect yourself, I have a few tricks up my sleeve and websites that I send people to, services that I send people to help them feel more comfortable and prepared for it. Like Amy said, stay ahead of it. I think some of it is the digital literacy piece of kind of knowing what seems fraudulent. And so we have a lot of work to do in that space. And then helping people realize that right now, sometimes the risks are worth doing something a little extra for our society. So we were able to kind of use that narrative of like, there are risks, but there are risks for a lot of things right now, and sometimes it's just worth it for the greater good. And we so far have not had any problems with any of the spots that we've opened up. So people are wanting to be good right now, I think. Like there's a unity in this space.
Sarah, that's an interesting point. I know one thing that I've heard is the issues with people congregating right now. So it seems like you're addressing cybersecurity concerns What about people congregating in parking lots to be able to use public Wi-Fi? Are you seeing city or town codes not allowing for that? Are you seeing people social distance pretty well? What are you seeing?
I've seen some of our communities. So the clustering we've seen in places that don't have as many hotspots to go to, and also simultaneously kind of struggle with severe access issues. And we recommended just kind of adhering to the same social distancing requirements. So I think in some of the libraries, I saw them set up cones every other parking place to kind of keep cars at least that far away, because they in that community, they definitely saw the clustering happen, where a lot of people were ending up at their library, and then, their kids are in the car, stuck, and for the first time, they've maybe seen their friends 2 cars over, and it already wasn't a conducive learning environment, and then the extra pieces kind of escalated it. So that we tried to make, or I guess make's the wrong word. We tried to help more people get public hotspots opened up so that there would be more places in general for people to go to.
That's interesting. I know that healthcare facilities are also beginning to think about how do they best provide Wi-Fi to their patients. What are you seeing in your area about how clinics are serving the public by providing Wi-Fi?
Telehealth was a really interesting one in this space because of how quickly, that was another one that had to change, pivot really quickly if they wanted to maintain their employees and if they wanted their patients to still be able to get their basic health care. They had to figure out telehealth, and they had to do it fast. And so we suggested, they came to us with a lot of problems regarding the fact that people were trying to do this on their phones and their cell service wasn't strong enough. They weren't able to get that video conferencing ability to be seamless. That's probably always going to be a struggle, but to kind of mitigate that, we said you could probably move around some of the equipment you have at your site and bring them to your parking lot. So they didn't want to be on a big map as public Wi-Fi, and any business could do that. They could say, hey, come to our parking lot, here's our login code, and let's have this conversation. In the space of telehealth, that's interesting because if the doctor decided they really needed to look further into that condition, then and they were inside already, they could make that decision on site. We had a very interesting thing happen in this space too. And could we bring up the slide of the Wi-Fi lot real quick? No? Okay.
It should be coming up in just a moment. It sometimes takes a minute.
So the Wi-Fi lot was our response to kind of show people where they could go. So when you can't go to the normal places, we did a basic inventory of places that we had vetted with our communities. And so far, none of the doctors wanted to be on this map. That's fine. But through our outreach, we had kind of a new thing come to us. We hear a lot about people who don't have internet, they can't afford it, or it doesn't really work, or it doesn't exist. But one of our nonprofits who works in mental health was speaking to the telepsych visits, and what they told us was that they were hearing a lot from mental health providers that suddenly these patients in this situation were potentially quarantined with their abusers in domestic violence situations, and they needed this map to be able to show them where they could go to still have those visits. So that, coupled with a lot of our healthcare facilities now operating out of their own parking lots, made for what we're kind of calling a much better user experience to struggling with the COVID-related challenges to Wi-Fi.
Thanks for sharing that slide. I'll also say, if we can go to the next slide, if you're looking for Wi-Fi hotspots that are near you, I know Paul in the chat just posted a list of locations that Roanoke Electric has set up. The Broadband Infrastructure Office out of the Department of Information Technology has also set up a really cool interactive map that shows both free and low-cost internet, as well as public Wi-Fi hotspots. If you type in your zip code, it'll show you both. And so we've just put that up on the screen so that you can go to the website there. It's very interactive and it allows you to see what is locally available. It's also been put into the chat. Sarah, before we move on back to Amy, do you have any other advice or comments for what are some of the opportunities and challenges around public Wi-Fi right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to not lose sight of the long game. Public Wi-Fi, I think, will always have a place in how we function in a digital world. The problem is when we're relying on it as our main source of internet. And so this needs to still keep happening, especially when we consider that this might not be the only time that we quarantine like this. We might do this again. And if we can learn something in this space that flips it on, if we have to do again in a few months or for whatever reason, in our region, we promote public Wi-Fi a lot for the sake of remote days for storms and weather, because we have a lot of snow days. We hadn't really considered the need for it in a pandemic, but here we are. And if we had already been practicing this for a while, we'd be much better equipped to handle it. So the opportunity I see here is to share some of these stories. And I think Roanoke Electric setting up so many of theirs to share that was successful, that how much it helped certain people make it through this time, and that some of the challenges were just worth the trouble to do because it was the right thing to do. And also try and use it to leverage funding. So that's one of the ways that we do it in a deployment, which is that's the real win here, is if we can get hotspots set up, if we can leverage funding to get hotspots set up and then build out from them so that the community around that hotspot then gets service, that's kind of a triple win from my perspective.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. Sarah's going to stay on in case there are other questions, but Amy, I'm going to switch back to you, and thank you for being so flexible and willing to jump in. Amy, we're talking about public Wi-Fi today, and you mentioned, some of the challenges that your community is facing in terms of reliability, in terms of bandwidth and speeds, and we're seeing some of that in real time right now. I'm wondering are you seeing any of your member businesses providing Wi-Fi right now? And if not, why do you think not? And if so, where have been the successes?
I think Roanoke Electric has been a tremendous success. I want to go back and talk about security that you all were talking about a while ago. Roanoke Electric put on a program for members about internet security, and we learned a lot that we had not learned before. I mean, some things, people are starting from different places, but I think as we go forward, we need to provide more of that training for people so that they can understand what is a threat and what they need to do with it. As many people at the schools have even looked at moving forward, providing one mobile bus that can ride around. I think Sarah might have talked about mobile hotspots, but we're looking at doing a bus that can take the hotspot around to some of the areas where the kids have more of the challenges of not having reliable transportation. Our industries did not really.
Amy, I just want to to jump in there and just say that yes, and more mobile hotspots on buses will be coming. A partnership between AT&T, Google, and Duke Energy is providing 280 buses around the state that will have mobile hotspots. So these are buses that can move around, but hotspots, it'll provide internet for about a half-mile radius. So you can go to where the bus is in your area, and hopefully it'll come closer to home than your school, so you can access that. And last week in the House Bill 1043, Department of Public Instruction is receiving another $1 million to provide hotspots on buses. So we're seeing this as a major trend that will come to your area.
We figured if we're sending homework packets to these kids who don't have the access, then why not take the Wi-Fi? So I think that's just wonderful. And I think everybody is encouraged at the funding that has been proposed. It's amazing what a pandemic can do. But we had the Roanoke Electric, we had the Community Health Center, our libraries, and that was pretty much it for our mobile hotspots here. And I don't know why, except that it just didn't cross the industry mind, maybe, that people needed it. I mean, for a lot of our people were essential workers and continue to work here. We looked around and wondered who wasn't working at times. But we've made it through, and the schools actually really had this challenge because these children need to graduate or not. They need to graduate, and it had to be meaningful instruction they were providing. So it was imperative to develop something very quickly that was effective.
Yeah. And you bring up the point of literacy or digital literacy, not just understanding what is cyber secure, but how to use the internet, how to use a computer. And this is one of the pillars of digital inclusion. It's not just about having access to the internet that you can afford. It's also having a device that you can use and then knowing how to use that. Are you hearing that from any of the people that you serve?
Definitely. It is definitely an issue, and it was definitely an issue with telehealth as we've tried to develop it. I mean, even people like me and Aaron Story, we couldn't remember our passwords to go on via my chart. But you know, we've developed a lot. If we couldn't remember our passwords, what was going on with the older people? So the Community Health Center had a great idea. They took their oldest physician still working, which is Charles Sawyer, and he's just amazing. And they kind of put him in charge of developing the telehealth during this time because they have a lot of chronic care patients that had to have their health care continue. And they were afraid to be out. And so they just did an amazing, it's been a wonderful thing to if they could see 85-year-old Charles Sawyer running this telehealth program, it gave them confidence to jump in there too and learn it. And it has made a huge transition in the last 2 months with that. That has been a wonderful thing coming out of it. And I think it will be continuing. Another positive from that is our emergency departments at the hospital saw a decline in the cases of people using it as they would have been going to a doctor, but instead they just came to the emergency room, which is taking an unnecessary and expensive load off of the EDs. So that was very, very positive. And the primary age group of people at the community health centers and going into the hospitals are older people who did not have these skills, who would say they would never email anybody or they would never use the internet, and they've learned. And I think they like it once they've started. They like not having to go out of their home.
Yeah, and it's important right now because the older population is the population most at risk. So if they can learn how to access the internet and how to use a device to connect with their doctors, it's really important. And Amy, you just teed me up because next week, this is a little plug, next week, same time, we will be talking to Kim Schwartz, CEO of the Roanoke Chowan Community Health Center, who will be talking about telehealth and how they've switched to telehealth. So I hope you can join me. Amy, we're almost out of time. I'm wondering if there's anything else you want people to know about public Wi-Fi and the challenges and opportunities that you're seeing locally.
I think that it has brought it so much to the attention and considering treating it like a utility. I know in Ahoskie, our town council has just done an about face. We would love to see a hotspot in all of downtown. We think that would be an incredible economic development tool. to bring people into town. It would be a good community development tool for people to be around each other. Hosky is going to step up the information and the presence on the internet. There have been a lot of things that this has triggered that have been very positive. Our restaurants, all but maybe two, stayed working and kept their employees, and they did it by doing this takeout, and they had to pivot very quickly. And they reported their businesses only down about 30%. They were taking orders on the internet. They were either delivering to the cars or some of them doing home delivery. And we feel like some of that's going to stay. We don't have it yet in our grocery stores, which a lot of people do, but we think that will come because of the literacy skill that our aging population, who really would use home delivery and need it, is going to be able to have and to use it. So we've seen some good things come out of it that we didn't expect.
Yeah, and Amy, I think you just threw down the gauntlet wanting Wi-Fi in downtown, a Hosky. If there's any elected officials on the line, you heard it here first. So Amy and Sarah, thank you both so much for joining us today. We are running out of time. Thank you all for sticking with us through some technical difficulties. Before I hand this off to Leslie to summarize, I just wanted to make note, and I'll link this in the chat, but tomorrow the U.S. Senate is having a hearing on the state of broadband during COVID-19. It'll be at 10 a.m. and broadcast live. There is talk that support for broadband expansion may be in a next stimulus package. We don't know, but if you want most up-to-date information, you can access that link, which I will share. Leslie has also been putting in the chat links to IEI's website, which has some analysis of some of the most recent policies that have come out on a state level in terms of expanding hotspots, in terms of expanding broadband infrastructure, and getting devices into the hands of people who need it. So please continue to check out those links. But Leslie, I'm going to pass it back to you to give us a little summary before we take it out.
Yes, thanks, Maggie. I just mentioned on the last point you made, Congressman Butterfield, who represents the 1st District, has been really active and has been aggressively lobbying for inclusion of broadband expansion in the next stimulus package. So if you want to get in touch through his office and add your voice to that, you can call one of his local offices on that. I think we heard a lot today about hotspots, what they can and can't do, and on the sort of argument for a better solution, got some pretty clear advice and energy from Amy about the importance of consistency of access in the Roanoke electric service area. It's not that people do not have access, it's that there are pockets where that access is not available and it's hard to predict. In some cases, it is in and out, and that's an issue that has implications for businesses. It has implications for quality of life. It has implications for people's children and their education. And so when a business is thinking about moving here, they want that assurance. And if a business is thinking about staying here, or if you're just a citizen in that area, you need consistency. Amy's plea, let's start treating it like a utility. And we're starting to hear that word from both state and national officials that are agreeing with her on that. Businesses in the area have been pivoting and are using the internet more than they have before. Looks like that's going to continue going forward. For people who don't have access right now, there are a set of emergency solutions that are coming. Maggie mentioned 280 school buses are going to be deployed throughout North Carolina, and the first 156 of them are really targeting areas like the Roanoke Electric service area. So you'll be seeing more buses coming out in the next few days with high-speed internet hotspots. There are also parts of the region that include libraries and special hotspots that Roanoke Electric has set up, and there are maps in the chat that you can access to find out where those are. Security remains an issue, but is beginning to get solved for people. And I'd say in the near term, the hotspot solution is really one of the fastest things you can do. In the long term, the approach that Roanoke Electric is taking of really trying to get internet into the home is the direction that we ultimately need to go. But in the meantime, these public Wi-Fi hotspots make a huge difference. So I'd like to thank both Amy and Sarah for being with us. And some of the internet connectivity we've had today, I think, just sort of makes the point about how important this is. So thanks to our guests and to Maggie Woods, who's really leading this effort for us for the work that they've done. And let me toss it now back to Kirby for a wrap up and a tease of next week's meeting.
Thank you, Leslie. And thanks to all the speakers. We really did have some great information and great suggestions of where we need to go in the future. So we really appreciate your time and your recommendations. Roanoke Electric is working very hard with Roanoke Connect to get this set up. Again, if you're curious, I had somebody write in that they were curious about when we're coming to their area. If you would go to registerroanokeconnect.com, you can sign up and we'll waive free installation until June 30th. If you register on that site, you can see the map. It's interactive of your location, and it'll give you some type of time frame. Also, we had a question I wanted to address about posting this recording. We had a series last week, and unfortunately, it took us a little bit longer to get it posted, but it is now up on RoanokeElectric.com at the top of the page, and then it takes you right over to the YouTube where it's hosted. We will be doing the same with today's recording, so if you have any friends or family that would like to hear this recording and missed it live, please help spread the word for us. We want to get this information out to the community. We feel like it's very important. And then, like Leslie said, next week we will be talking to Kim Schwartz, the CEO of Roanoke Chowan Community Health Center. They had to move very quickly and implement telehealth procedures. I think it was Sarah that was mentioning sometimes businesses just need to know how to do things a little differently. And our team did actually, Roanoke Connect did go out and meet with Kim and the team and move their access points closer to the windows, which actually made a big difference in the connectivity. So we're trying to be very responsive to everybody during this time, and we appreciate your patience, and we're very, very excited to bring Roanoke Connect when we start again in October. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you'll join us next week at 11 a.m. at the same time, and we'll talk about telehealth. Thank you.